Every week we talk about police brutality, and every week we mention that police body cameras are a potential solution. But Josh, you wrote this week that body cameras can actually be used as crime-fighting tools that might infringe on people's rights. How would these body cameras work against the citizenry?
Well, the thing is that a lot of body cam manufacturers are trying to, especially since they're being required in a lot of places, they're now fighting for the contract. And one of the ways that they're trying to appeal to police officers is by, putting tech in the body cameras that can help make their job easier. For example, police can, in 12 states, there's no facial recognition use by law enforcement. Every other law enforcement division, every other state, they're using facial recognition, pulling your faces off of traffic cameras and identifying you from, all that footage. Now they could link that up to the body camera. So a police officer can be just walking down the street, catch your face. If you're wanted, they, in theory, could, turn right around and apprehend you. Or, worst case scenario is that it gives a false positive and they jump and attack some innocent person who they thought was someone that was wanted. But it does show that, these body cameras are not, just like any technology, they can be applied in ways that sort of encroach on private citizens' rights and make the policing, giving the police more power and more tools at which to, investigate people without their knowledge.
Eric, are you willing to take that trade-off in order to, maybe hold police?
Actually,
yeah, go ahead.
And also, Eric, they're using them in Canada already. There was, you know about that?
Yeah, no, I've been reading about it. For me, I actually support the body cams. I think that they should be implemented across police forces in both the United States, Canada, and that's worldwide, any Western country. I think that they add a level of accountability which is needed. Any situation where you're dealing with firearms or potential high danger situations, I think that adding a camera to add a second layer of credibility to the argument is necessary. Whether it protects the police officer from a drunk girl who said that he raped her, or it protects a citizen from a cop that's going rogue and shooting people and trying to play it off as an accident. I mean, we've seen it happen. Let's say, what was the one shooting that took place where the guy was recording from a fence and on the grass the police officer shot the guy like 5 times?
Walter Scott.
Okay, that's the one. So if there was a video recording of that would have just been another case of a black man trying to rob a cop that got killed. Because there was some footage, it saved the day. And in the case where there was body cams, then it would have obviously shown the truth in that sense too. However, then some people may say, well, what if the officer doesn't turn it on? You need to enact punishment. If an officer doesn't have his cam on during a dicey situation, he needs to be punished as if he was hiding something, or they need to develop a system where they come on automatically. If citizens are going to start complaining about how it infringes on their rights, I don't think they're looking at the bigger picture. I think when they implemented it somewhere in California, I want to say San Francisco, or was it in LA, they noticed an over 70 or 80% reduction in violent crime and police brutality instances. So I think that it's a trade-off that's worth doing. The costs are minimal, and what it provides for society as a whole is a much needed level of accountability.
Peter, is it a trade-off worth doing?
Well, two things. First of all, one thing that technology should be already doing with body cams is they should be linked. They should be running constantly. This is what happens like in surveillance cameras in the grocery store. They run constantly, and you've always got 24 hours, for example, of footage on that camera. And then at some point it starts erasing, it's re-erasing and re-recording over that. So the cop should never be in a position where he or she can turn the body cam on and off. If they didn't want to do something like that, then it would be relatively easy to have the camera triggered by, say, a firearm, the police officer removing a weapon from the holster, the taser, anything like that. I mean, the idea that cops can decide when evidence can be gathered and when it shouldn't is ridiculous. It puts a hole in the whole theory. Facial recognition is one of the scary surveillance technologies that is now in the dog is already left on this one. City of London has over 1 million security cameras right now. New York City is probably very, very close to that. And all of them can and probably are connected to facial recognition technology. I did a story for Latest.com a week or two ago about how in Britain they scan the faces of an entire concert audience and look through there. At Super Bowl in the United States, everybody gets facially scanned without their knowledge, ostensibly looking for terrorists, but what in fact they start pulling out are all sorts of other people who they're interested in or wanted for. You connect facial technology with other forms of surveillance, and basically you start to know an awful lot about someone. And once that information exists, it doesn't go away. Once that information exists, its use is subject only to the people who can access it, and we already know a lot about how lame the security is on these things. You know, the body cams are an incremental step in the wrong direction in terms of surveillance, but I suspect on the scale of things, a relatively minor one, especially since there is.
Well, one thing worth mentioning. I was just going to say, one thing worth mentioning is that, the body cams and using it as for facial recognition or, recording people without their knowledge, they're not mutually exclusive ideas. A number of activist groups, from the ACLU to a lot of libertarian privacy advocates to the NAACP, have just proposed have body cams, don't use facial recognition on them. Mm-hmm. And that's the type of common sense sort of measure that gives you the best of both worlds, ultimate protection on the citizen, but also in today's world fails to actually, gain any traction when it comes time to have decisions made.
The problem with any technology is that once you implement it, there's always going to be innovations in it, whether good or bad for the citizens. It's going to happen. It's something we can't stop.
There's a matter of trust, too, about, for example, like turning off the facial. We have learned recently regarding the Stingray. This is a technology used by law enforcement to capture cell phone signals. And officially, stingrays can be used in most cases without warrants as long as they're simply collecting location data or metadata or something other than the content of the phone calls. Well, it turns out that the technology really has a on-off switch built into it. I'm being a little bit simplistic, but essentially it does. That would allow it to access the content of calls, what you're actually saying, and we're basically trusting law enforcement to not use that when they're employing the Stingray semi-legally. So these things get very, very spooky, and once, as Eric pointed out, the technology exists, where it goes and how it's used are nearly impossible to control.
1984.
It's 1984 was not supposed to be an instruction manual, but that's how it's turned out.